Hi, my name is Jordan Jarrett-Bryan, and these are my top 5 tips to level up and become a sports broadcaster. Okay, so a really important tip I want to give to everybody is learning that the mic is your friend. Now, whether you work in radio, whether you work on television, learn to be very, very comfortable and very friendly with the microphone or the camera. The best broadcasters often are the people that have a confidence in front of camera, in front of the mic, and that really comes through. If you're someone that doesn't necessarily have huge amounts of confidence, this can be gained. It's just learning that really you're talking maybe to 1 million people, 100,000 people, but actually when you're on location or in the studio, you're talking to one person. The people that broadcast the best are the ones that connect with you. Talk down the camera and they make you feel like this person is reading the news or reporting to me. So the best sports broadcasters for me that do this really well are people like Jeanette Quatche, Stephen A. Smith in the States. I would also say that Ian Wright, the former football player, is really comfortable on the mic and in front of the camera, and it makes you feel really comfortable as well, and it really helps a lot when it comes to engagement. So learning to be very friendly and comfortable with the microphone and or the camera is a really important skill when it comes to broadcasting. Passion. This tip is all about showing and not just being passionate. It's really important in a field, especially like sports, where people, fans, players, athletes are passionate, as a broadcaster that you exude and show that passion as well. It's really important that you show your audience that you're really enthused by what it is you're talking about. Sport can have really, really high highs and it can have really low lows. As a viewer, as a fan, I want to know that when you're telling me about a goal or about a knockout punch or a winning serve in a grand slam, that moment, you feel it the same way I as a fan feel it. So it's about managing that level of excitement. You don't want to go too crazy and become too fan-like, but you want to show the viewer that you're passionate about what you're talking about. And for me, again, the best sports broadcasters in the game are the ones that have that level of passion that when I listen or watch them, I feel like they feel how I feel. When I saw that goal scored, what they're saying really illustrates how I was feeling. So it's not just enough for me that you are passionate, it's really important that you show you're passionate. So for me, showing how passionate you are is a really key element in sports broadcasting. So a tip that not a lot of people would expect to hear is having the understanding of other cultures and being able to speak another language. It's a really underrated skill or level of knowledge to possess, I think, within sports broadcasting and sports journalism, full stop. Sport is a multicultural, international genre, if you like, and having the ability to speak a second language as a broadcaster can not only open up doors and open up stories that you otherwise wouldn't have if you only spoke one language, but it can make you more employable as well. So take football. Most of the stuff that I do is around football. In the Premier League here in England, most people speak English, but the Premier League is a very multicultural football league. And having the ability to speak Spanish, French, Italian, German, another language will make you much more employable to employers if they know they can send you to a game because they know you can speak to that manager who can't speak English, but he can speak another language. That will give you the advantage over, say, another sports broadcaster who's really good, but he or she can't speak another language. And cultures is big as well. Having a better understanding of other people's cultures within sport, again, is huge. If you can relate and understand to other people's cultures, again, that gives you an advantage in accessing those stories, but also being more employable. The best example I can think of in recent times of having an understanding of another culture being a benefit to me and some of my peers is around the football player Paul Pogba. Now, he's a Frenchman, and he's a Frenchman that's very flamboyant, and he came back to the Premier League a few years ago to Manchester United, and his whole rhetoric and narrative around who he is the person and his dance moves and his haircuts and the things he does in his personal life on his Instagram. And that for an English broadcaster that just knows about English culture, it's seen as a negative. But if you understand the culture that Paul Pogba comes from, you'll understand that, well, for a lot of black people, dancing is a very important part of our culture. Fashion is a very important part of our culture. Music is a very important part of our culture. If you don't understand the culture of French African people, that's going to be missed on you, and you're going to report on that particular person in a way that doesn't do that individual justice. So I would say understanding other people's cultures and speaking a second language, again, will give you a massive head start against some of your competitors. So this tip is one of the hardest things to implement when being a sports broadcaster. It's preparing for the unexpected. So when you work in broadcasting as a journalist and you get sent to an event, it's very, very rare that the interview will actually come back and result in how you kind of planned it beforehand. So the ability to be flexible and to be ready for something to go wrong is really, really important. When the Super League discussions were happening about a year ago now, I was sent to Chelsea Football Club to do a live for the news. So on my way there, I know the story, I'm preparing for the live, I'm gonna start with this, I'm gonna finish with that, this is the bulk of the story, great. Literally a minute before my live happened, I was told by my director that the story that I'd prepared for had now changed. So with 45 seconds to go, I have to now flip and now be very, very flexible in being able to, okay, what I've got in my head and what I've rehearsed in my mind, that's breaking news. I've got to change that. And being able to change that in the same time frame and be across the facts of it and deliver what I can, bearing in mind it's breaking news, can fluster and really throw lots of people, especially in live TV. That's hard enough if you're doing it in production where it's not live, but live where you've got your stance, you're ready, they're coming to you, to really get your head around a new story in 60 seconds is very, very difficult. It's about being calm and it's about delivering what you can with the knowledge that you have. So my final tip is simple, enjoy it. As I mentioned earlier on, this job, more times than not, is bringing joy. You're reporting on goals, epic moments in sport, you know, records broken by athletes that are almost superhumans. This job, there are a lot of jobs that bring a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and a lot of sadness. Being a sports broadcaster is so much fun. I've been blessed. I've got to travel the world because of being a sports broadcaster. I've covered some of the biggest sporting events in the world. I've covered World Cups, football, cricket and rugby. I've got to cover Paralympics. I've got to cover athletics meets, boxing, heavyweight fights, F1, Wimbledon. I've been so blessed. And I think it's really important when you become a sports broadcaster that you never lose that enjoyment. The minute you do, find something different to do. Nobody wants to see a sports broadcast that looks and sounds miserable because your job is dope. Your job is really, really good. And I know, I won't name any names, but I know some sports broadcasters who you can just tell the enjoyment has been beaten out of them. The idea of having to fly to Milan or to South America or Brazil, somewhere in Brazil or Africa or America to cover a story is arduous to them. And I'm like, really? Really? And when you get to that point, stop being a sports broadcaster. Just enjoy it, because believe me, this job, there's some downsides to it, but there's a whole lot of upsides to it as well. Okay, because it's me and I love you so much, I'm gonna nice you up. I'm gonna give you an extra tip just because I can. My bonus tip would be to understand all elements of production. If you're working in television or you're working in radio or you're a podcaster, as a broadcaster and journalist, it's really important that you not only understand what your job is, but you understand how everyone in the team's role plugs in to what you do. And ultimately, it's trying to make you look good. So as a broadcaster, I have to be aware of things like audio. So I have to be aware of, like, if I've got a mic on, I don't have to shout. Why are you shouting, Jordan? You've got a microphone on. That could be problematic for the editor later on if my audio is peaking. I have to be aware of the cameras, where the camera is. Am I talking to a person or am I talking to the camera? All those things are important in terms of making the editor who's got to put it together make his or her job easier. If in radio, I have to be aware of the tech op and the person that works in sound as well. For there, I've got to be aware of the timings because, okay, my producer's saying you've got to be out, hit the brake on 48, 13 seconds, there's a reason for that. I can't talk and go over. There might be a real advertising reason why we've got to hit that break on that exact second. So me being selfish and going over my time impacts the wider show. So understanding the whole element of production is really, really important, and your crew will thank you for it as well.